everyone, and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be talking all about macros and what they actually mean and how you can use them and how and why they're important. So there's a lot of talk and they get mentioned a lot, macros. So what are they? Essentially everything we eat falls into one of three buckets. So macros, in short, are short for macronutrients, and there are three buckets. So we've got proteins, carbohydrates and fats, and essentially everything falls into one or a combination of these buckets. So for example, a banana is a carbohydrate, chicken breast is a protein, and then you get like olive oil, which would be a fat. If you're making a pasta sauce, you're likely to be falling into all three of those buckets. Okay, so what we need to be thinking about and what's really important to get across is macros influence how our body responds to food, and the reason they're important in our diet, especially if we are trying to lose weight or if we're trying to build muscle, we need to use macros in a different way in order to reach that goal. So if I break down each one individually, so proteins to start off with, proteins in its simplest form are building blocks for our body. So our body is made up of proteins, and when we eat proteins, we are essentially building more in our bodies. So that's like the simplest way of putting it. And if we want to build muscle, essentially what we're doing is we're ripping and repairing the muscle fibers, and proteins help with that build and that repair. So the more protein we're consuming, the more we've got to help with that build repair, which is why protein gets mentioned a lot when it comes to building muscle, strength training, because we need a higher percentage of that in order to help with that, that repair. Now carbs, I want you to think about them as purely in their simplest form, are energy. We need energy in order to live, and we need carbohydrates to provide us that energy, and they are essentially fueling us. They fuel our brain, they fuel our digestive system, our nervous system, everything. If we're not getting enough carbohydrates into our body, we're likely to feel tired, sluggish. We won't perform our best at whichever we're doing, cardio, strength training, whatever it might be. If we haven't got the fuel coming in, we are unlikely to have the energy to expend on those sports, etc. Also just living. So when you think about carbs as energy, and then finally we got fats. So fats have been demonized by the diet culture, but fats are essential for all of our hormone reproduction. And that might be our hunger hormones, it might be our reproductive hormones. Like every hormone in our body needs fat in order to stay stable, to produce, etc. So we need fats in our diet. And it's essential for us to have them. The right fats, of course, and there are different types of fats, but in a nutshell, fats are not bad and we should not eliminate them. They have just been demonized as being seen as against the diet, but that's simply just not the way it is. So think about those three buckets. Every one of us, depending on what our goal is, needs to have a different ratio of those. And there is a calculation to think about how you might want to split those. There's a lot of talk about, is it 40, 30, 30? What's the split? But ultimately, we need to think about macros in the context of your total calories. So depending on what your total calories are, depends on your goal. Therefore, depends on what your macros are according to fit into those total calories. So if you want to build muscle, which I know is a goal for a lot of people, in short, what we want to be thinking about is we want high protein, you want moderate to high carbohydrates, and you want adequate fat. So however that split looks like for you with your total calories, in order to build muscle, though, that's the sort of split you want to be looking at. On the flip side of that, if you're trying to lose fat, lose weight, you'll be looking to split high protein, lower, not low, carbs, so lower carbs, but still adequate fats, because as we know, we need them for our hormones. So we still need those adequate fats in our diet if we want to lose fat. might seem counterintuitive, but they are essential in our diet. And the other thing to note is we're talking here macros. There are a lot of micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, etc. We need certain fats and carbs in order to help us absorb those micronutrients. So for example, fat soluble vitamins need fat in order to help us absorb those. We need carbohydrates to be able to get adequate fiber and other minerals that come in carbohydrates. So we need the macros in order to support the micronutrients as well. I'm not going to go into those in too much detail, but just to bring that to life as well. That's why they're so important. Now, there's a lot of talk about tracking calories and tracking your macros. And what I say to my clients and my approach with this is, I think it is really, really important to track your calories and your macros for a period of time. Now, for some people it works and they can keep going long term. It doesn't work for everybody. So the approach should be track for a period of time purely for awareness, because a lot of us are unaware of actually how much we're consuming and how much protein we're actually eating, how many carbs we're actually eating, how much fat we're eating. So unless you're actually tracking and you're aware of what we're consuming, we might actually be either massively over or massively under eating. Like, you might think you're only eating 1,700 calories, but when you actually sat down and tracked what you ate over a 2 or 3 week period, you might actually be eating 2,200. That's a massive difference, and might be the reason why you're not seeing the progress that you want to if you're expecting to be in a deficit, for example. So my approach is really use tracking to get you on track and do it purely for education and awareness. And if you know, oh God, I am eating 1,900, 2,000 calories, you've got that as a benchmark to then start making changes against. If you haven't got that data, you're not going to be able to make those adjustments. But very much, as I said, for me, you don't have to track forever if it doesn't work for you. Track for a period of time, get that data, and then act on it accordingly. And be aware of how much you are eating. We should always be going protein first. As we know, we need that for that build, repair. We need the carbohydrates for our energy. If you've ever had a day where you're feeling really tired, sluggish, it might be because you just haven't got enough fuel in your body. But we want good carbs. There are both fibrous and non-fibrous carbs. I'll talk about that in a separate session, but there are different types of carbs that have a different function. And then fats, as we said, we need that fat for our hormones and keeping everything stable. Also, fats are very calorie dense, so you can actually get more bang for your buck by having fats in your diet than you can from the other two. So just to finish this off, just want to bust a few myths that I know are out there, and just to really nip them in the bud. Carbs are not the devil, okay? Carbs should not be avoided. As I've said, we need them in our diets. And back in the 90s, when it was like we all had to be on this low carb diet, gone of that. We need carbs. It's really important you're getting the carbohydrates you need to meet your goals. Secondly, you don't need to hit your macros perfectly every single day. People find tracking calories can be quite overwhelming, like, oh God, I haven't hit my protein today, or I went over my carbs. Think about it on a weekly rather than a daily scale, because you might be over on one day, under on another, and then your net value over the whole week is neutral. And that's what we want to be doing. We want to be thinking about, it's not a perfect day. We're looking at a week and how we're hitting them consistently over a week. So if we think about that, it gets us out of that all or nothing thinking that allows us that flex across the week. So you don't need to hit everything perfectly every single day. And finally, the final myth I want to bust is fats are not bad and we should not avoid them. As I've said, they are really essential to our diet. The right fats, of course, but we need them and we shouldn't shy away from them. So just to bring all of this together, got 3 macros. They all serve a purpose. Protein, think about building blocks. Carbs, fuel and energy. And fats are essential for our hormones, so we need them for exactly that reason. Now, we need to adjust these according to our goal. If you're trying to build muscle, you want slightly higher protein, higher carbohydrates, adequate fats. If you're trying to lose weight, lose fats, you want high protein, lower carbs, but still getting that adequate fat in. So just something to think about. And if you want any more guidance or anything on macros and how you can use them, if you comment or message me the word macros, I've got a guide I can send over for you which details all of this and gives you somewhere to start. Now, I hope that was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you on a call very soon. Thanks, guys.